We know the bridge is working now. We'll get to the attendance in just a second. Thank you.
We'll go through. Thanks. I also want to remind everyone that there's the hand-raising tool that's out there if you're using it. Richard's monitoring it right now. We use that through the day, and otherwise, I think all normal ways to get in there. So let's go ahead and begin. I just want to just thank everyone for being here today. Just a reminder, yes, this is the first EAC meeting of 2012. There was nothing in January, so you didn't miss anything last month. And Happy New Year to everyone, and we're looking forward to really working on some of the things that we have to do this year. So before I go through, and Richard and I have a couple opening comments, we'll go right to the attendance and just see who's all here and make sure everything's working. Cheryl?
Okay. And also I'd like to introduce a new attorney working with the Disability Rights Office and our Bureau. Bob, you can come on up to the table. Bring your coffee. This is Bob Aldrich, the new legal advisor in the front office working with Karen and Disability Rights Office. Welcome, Bob. And I'll move to the attendance. And let me finish with the conference bridge. Bernarda Boba.
Here.
Brian's here. Tony Dunn.
Yes, I'm here.
Sherry Farina. Laurie Flaherty.
Good morning.
Good morning, Laurie. Mark Fletcher. Gunnar Hellstrom.
Yes, going on here.
Welcome. Hey, Patrick. And Brendan Casper.
Yes.
Chris Littlewood will be available on the afternoon only, I believe. Bruce McFarlane. Don Mitchell.
Yes, I'm here.
Donna, we heard you before. Marcy Roth.
Yes, I'm here. That's right. Donna.
Greg Schumacher. John Snap. Al Sonnenstrahl.
Here.
Greg Vanderheiden.
Yep, good morning.
Good morning. Arnold Van Wyck.
Arnold's here too.
And Joel Zev.
Yes.
Is there anyone else on the conference bridge that I didn't call your name?
Ronnie Cotton.
Would you repeat that, please?
Ronnie Cotton.
Brian Cox.
Ronnie Cotton.
Oh, Ronnie Cotton. I'm sorry, Ronnie. Welcome. We've been missing you.
Hi, Cheryl. It's Laura Ruby.
Laura, thank you. Anyone else on the bridge?
Susan Sherwood, Verizon Wireless, is on the bridge.
Susan, thank you. Anyone else? Angel Arocho? Okay. All right. Patrick Donovan, thank you for coming. We also have David Zumba. But I want to introduce a new alternate from Addis, Jean-Paul Amard. Would you raise your hand so that people can see you? He's new to our group. Thank you. Daniel Falk. Matt Gerst. Kevin Green. Rebecca Ledoux. She made it over today. Welcome, Rebecca. Bob Mather. Neil McDivitt. Paul Michaelis. Jim Nixon. Richard Ray. Welcome from the West Coast. Karen is here. Mark Stern is here. Christian Vogler and Norm Williams are here. Have I missed anyone else? All right. I think that's our agenda, David.
Okay. You want to make some comments?
I'd like to introduce Hillary Martinson. She's our counsel from Office of Disability Rights section, and she's sitting over here to our right. You're going to see her a lot more in the future.
Good. Welcome, Hillary.
And we have somebody to introduce.
Oh, I did introduce him. Yeah. And brought him to the table.
Any other introductions? Go ahead, Richard.
Good morning, everyone. This is Richard here. First of all, I wanted to welcome you all to the first meeting for the EAC. And before I turn this over, we just wanted to thank all of you for your hard work, and especially working on the report that was submitted to the FCC on December 7th of 2011. We had the policy group as well as the technical group working together, and I know they put their sweat and work into it to make sure that they were able to get everything done. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank each and every one of you for your support in developing that document. So thank you. Okay, and with that, I'll turn it over to David.
Well said. I know that last year we had a lot of Tiger teams, coordination committees, a lot of mix and match of a lot of people and all that. So again, I just wanted to say thanks for a lot of work last year. And now we have 2012 here to look forward toward. And so as the day goes along, we go through the agenda, I think things will start to clarify on what we're trying to accomplish, and then we'll see how those things will start to scope and work themselves out. And that's really about it. So I think we're going to move right into the next agenda item, and that's really just the review and approval of the minutes. I know this goes back to November of 2011, and I don't know if anybody has any comments or corrections or anything on those. If not, we'd just like to move to approve those minutes.
Has anyone reviewed the minutes? Do we need to create a motion? Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as printed from anyone?
Someone.
Anyone want to make a motion to accept the minutes as written?
So moved.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any objections? Seeing none, motion carries.
That was quick. Okay. I think now we're going to go right into the next item there, and this is just really update on FCC activities and
this
maybe
is
a few people.
Cheryl King here. I forgot to introduce Elliot Greenwald. Elliot, welcome. Thank you for coming. Patrick, can you give us an update on the NG911 MPRM?
Sure. We have been very active in public safety, reviewing your comments that were submitted in December in the NG911 proceeding in response to the NPRM. We have met with several of you since the EAC report was published. NG911, the reply comments were due yesterday, and so we are now they should be posted hopefully by the end of the day today, and so we'll be reviewing them and scheduling some more meetings, I'm sure. And it is very much a priority of the Bureau and the Commission to move forward in this proceeding, and so we'll continue to be active.
I don't really have anything to add on emergency access. Just wanted to let everybody know, in case you're interested in other disability issues, that in January we issued our final rules on IP captioning, which require the television program shown over the internet, or rather shown on television with captions, continue to have those captions when they're shown on the internet. Those rules went out on January 13th, and it's our latest CVAA proceeding. We are also in the process now of reviewing applications under our National Deafblind Equipment Distribution Program, which will be giving out equipment to low-income people who are deaf and blind around the country. We have received around 60 different applications from local entities throughout the nation that will be taking on the responsibility of distributing this equipment, and are hoping to get this program up and running in July. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Cheryl King here. And again, to remind folks that when you speak, please say your name so that the microphones can pick it up and so that the captioners can pick it up. And if you forget and you're in the room, I want to give you the high sign for your name so you can remember to let us know who's speaking. The next item on the agenda is just a review of what we did in 2011. We constructed and sent out the survey. We had fantastic results, great response. We wrote a survey report. We released that. And then we got to work on the real meat of the EAC, the recommendations. And we had 37 policy recommendations. We had 36 technical recommendations and 4 education and outreach recommendations for a total of 77 recommendations. And I've been looking at those and am kind of working on merging them so we can reduce that number and maybe, take it another layer into responding to the charge from our statute to provide recommendations to the FCC. In the report and recommendations, we did not call for an end to TTY use by consumers or PSAPs. We recommended, the EAC recommended, that industry and consumer advocates collaborate. We recommended the automatic invocation of sign language interpretation. The recommendations call for real-time text and video conference calling under NG 911. Recommended a process for testing and training in the 911 calling for consumers and for the PSAP call takers in disability culture. The EAC recommended that the FCC require IP-based telecommunications relay services providers to build automatic location gathering features into IP-based relay client applications. The EAC recommended that the FCC and the Department of Justice coordinate their rulemakings. The EAC supported the NENA I3 detailed functional and interface specifications. The EAC recommended that NG 911 calls be handled as persistent data calls, and the EAC recommendations clearly supported Chairman Janikowski's 5-step action plan. There were 4 areas that were specifically called out for additional work in 2012. And you'll find them on the second page of your handout with the agenda. And we'll come back to that later in the meeting. But these are the 4 areas that we specifically said in the recommendations that we would address in 2012. Sign language assistance, interoperability testing, timeline contingency, and short-term mobile solutions. As we were working down to the wire on the recommendations, we recognized that we would not have the time to adequately address several of the sections that we had started in the report. And we pulled those sections out. And one of the items that we should discuss today is whether or not we will revisit those sections and prepare them for some further document. And we'll go into that, too, later when we're talking about the detailed plan. In 2011, not coincidentally, I'm sure, the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau was moving forward on a number of items relating to NG 911. And so the EAC's work is very timely and very important. We did a survey. We did a survey report. We prepared a report and recommendations. And we did it all in 1 year. So everybody pat yourself on the back, pat your partner on the back, your neighbor on the back, because we did an amazing job. You want me to just slip into the next item on the agenda? Move into talking about the draft plan, or is there any comment from the audience on our 2011 activities? Okay. Okay, Karen.
I just want to thank you. I mean, it's really when you first got together, and I remember Henning and Cheryl and Ray saying you're going to do this survey within 3 months, something crazy like that, and lots of people said it can't be done, and you did it, and you did the report, and you did an amazing job, and we are ecstatic that you have not disbanded. I want to thank you for continuing your work and your dedication to these issues. You've really done a miraculous amount of work in a very, very short period of time, and we're looking forward to working with you over this next year.
That actually reminds me to bring up one point, too. Most of you probably already know, but Henning is now back full-time with the FCC as CTO, reporting directly to the chairman's office. And so he is still very much involved in the NG 911 proceeding, and we meet with him quite a bit on this.
Yes, having Cheryl King here, having Henning as our FCC's Chief Technology Officer is a great boon to us, I believe. We're welcoming some new folks. Mark Fletcher, welcome. See, you came in. Your tag will be over there, I believe. If not, it's on the table. All right. And during the day, I do have certificates of appreciation from the FCC to each of you, and those of you who are not here will mail them out. Suitable for framing, and I will give them to you at break and at lunch so that we can maximize our work around the table.
But we don't want you to take those and just leave. We want you to continue working. But thank you. We wanted to show our appreciation to you.
Mr. Asterix. Mr. Woods Asterix. Cheryl King again. Thank you. All right. On to 2012. Cheryl King again. We did charter ourselves for 2 years. We, during the first year, we were required to meet monthly, and it was kind of rough on a lot of folks, but we did it. We don't have to meet every month in 2012 because we have accomplished the statutory requirement for the recommendations. Recreation, wow. As we look forward to how we can be productive and meaningful to the FCC's work on NG 911, we have some opportunities to discuss what and how we will go about completing work that we want to accomplish in 2012. I spoke of the 4 areas that we deferred for further work and would like to open up the floor for some conversation. Let's consider if we want to do subcommittees, working groups, whatever, on each of the 4, and let's discuss also the 2 areas that were not in the recommendations. One, to complete the sections we deleted, and the other one is to work to identify some gaps and potential problems between NENA I3 and the EAC recommendations. David?
Well, actually, Donna has a question, so
good.
Donna?
Yes, this is Donna here speaking. You had mentioned that we're going to be having possibly four subcommittees or working groups. 2 questions. What is the timeline on that and to accomplish the goal? That's the first question. And second question, is it okay to include people from outside of EAC?
This is Cheryl. Let me get to the last part first, because I just heard it yesterday in the video programming Access Advisory Committee. We are not limited to the EAC members to help us in our continuing work. There are some restrictions, but generally we are permitted to consult with outside experts, and as that is desired, then we can approach what steps are necessary to do that. The first part, Donna, I believe you asked if we had timelines. Our only timelines are self-imposed. We are chartered through 2012, and we don't have any statutory deadlines to adhere to. However, the FCC is moving forward with a number of rulemaking proceedings that will be of interest to us and that will be interested in us in the EAC's work and recommendations. Does that answer your question, Donna? Go ahead.
This is Donna here. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the bridge?
We have a question from Lori Flaherty as well.
Okay. Laurie, go ahead.
Thank you, Cheryl. My agenda only has one page, so if you could repeat the 4 issue areas that we talked about, that you mentioned and needing additional work, that would be very helpful.
This is Cheryl. Yes, I just realized that the folks out there don't have the same handout. The 4 recommendations were P2.10 for sign language assistance, recommendation P3.3 interoperability testing, recommendation P6.3 timeline contingency, and recommendation T1.2 short-term mobile solutions. The other 2 areas are to complete sections deleted from the recommendations, report and recommendations, and also work on the NENA I3 comparison to the recommendations. Can I open the floor to discussion? I'll turn to Christian Vogler because he can elaborate on the NENA I3 correlation to the recommendations. Go ahead, Christian.
Sure, this is Christian here. And I just actually came back from the NENA conference. And I have heard some concerns from people about video call communications with PSAPs and about how video conference is pulling in the participants and exactly how that is supposed to work. And I've also heard some concerns about text communications as well. So I believe that it's important to look into the I3 standards and to check to see how that aligns with our recommendations to make sure that we can identify gaps so that we can identify potential problems and then address those and propose solutions to fix those problems. And I know for sure that we have some work left to do in those areas.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. This is Cheryl. Let me suggest that we consider establishing working groups to address the continuing work on these 6 areas. We have 34 members. There won't be any tough deadlines except those that we impose upon ourselves, which I would encourage the groups to do when they get formed. Can we have some discussion, please?
This is Greg. I think the forming of groups is a good idea because I think that that's the way we've gotten most of the content and also got a lot of ideas filtered through different lenses so that they came to the full committee in better form. So I think that's a really great idea.
We also have a couple, we have Bernard and Brian. Bernard?
Pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with the idea of having deadlines, particularly if there will be gaps identified in standards, because you'd want to have your opinion ready for the standards meetings at the appropriate dates. So you can communicate with them.
All right. Thanks, Bernard. Brian?
Yes, Brian Daly. I agree with all that has just been stated. The other point I wanted to bring up was we should also look at the reports being generated by the FCC CISRIC Working Group 1 on transition to NG911. There was recently a report completed which did look at standards and identify gaps in standards in the transition, and that may be useful information for the EAAC to look at as well. Thank you.
Hey, Brian, this is Dave. You have access to that you can send forward to Cheryl?
This is Brian. Yes, I do.
Okay. See if I'm looking it up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
This is Cheryl. What we could do is I can construct a matrix and send it out to you all and ask you to send back to me your preferences and priorities for working on these 6 or 7 areas. That would give you some time to perhaps check your schedules and consider the charge of these areas and get back to me. Is that something that you would prefer? Okay. All right. Cheryl again. Then let's move to a discussion about meetings and events. The FCC is preparing to conduct an event probably in April on an interim text solution to 911. It may be the form of a town hall or panels. That's yet to be determined. But whatever the format is, we certainly would like to have a portion of it dedicated to the EAC, whether or not you select parties to complete a panel to address the agenda of the day or what is yet to be determined. But think about that and think about how frequently in 2012 you would like to meet, or whether we can continue to do our work via email and teleconference in the working group formats that we have discussed. Think about how we can best utilize the brilliance of the members of the EAC, their expertise and experience, and provide further guidance to the FCC on emergency access to 911 for people with disabilities. Your agenda handout, sorry people on the phones, I messed up on that, is a calendar. It's simply a 2012 calendar for us to consider. I have indicated the federal holidays on the calendar. We're meeting today, February 10th. I have the opportunity to schedule this commission meeting room 4 meetings on the second Friday of each month. Whether or not we use them for meetings or for events, or I turn them back over to the FCC for use, is to be determined. But at least I do have that established now that we could look forward to for planning purposes. I would hate to think that today is the last day that we get together. Those of you on the bridge, I was faking tears. But I really do think that our face-to-face meetings are productive. Not only the efforts that we take on the record, but the networking that occurs during breaks and before and after meetings and lunch. And I think that we have benefited from that. So can I open the floor for discussion?
Well, we'll just, we have NDQ Gunnar.
Yeah, Gunnar Hellström here. I, in fact, had a question on where to place an activity we have been discussed. It is about the TTY. How long can TTY be supported, and how bad is the transmission of TTY? And it's related to gaps in NINA I3, which believes that TTY can be carried by VoIP into the PSAPs, which may not be true. And it's related to plans for cutting off PSTN that is handled elsewhere in FCC. Where shall we place that discussion in the 7 subgroups that you formed? And can we make it a real good discussion and have real material as output from our work this year? Is it a part of continuation of our incompleted sections, or?
This is Cheryl. Christian?
Yeah.
Do you have some input?
Yes, I do. This is Christian speaking. First, I want to agree with what Gunnar has said. I think it's really important that we do look into that. The second issue is that I really have a question about the timeline. And that goes back to what Brian has said, what Brian Daly was commenting about. I was involved with that CISRIC group, with Group 1, identifying where the gaps were in the standards. And we had discussed accessibility there, and we were trying to decide if we should wait for the EAC report. And now that the EAC report is available, I think this would be a perfect time to continue working on those topics and go back and identify those gaps with this between the standards and the EAC reports. But the CISRIC work group, and in terms of the work that they did, they were really coming up tight on the deadline. The assignment was to get everything together by October of 2011. And then the deadline to complete the work overall was 2 months later. So it was quite a tremendous amount of work in a short period of time. So that also makes me believe that it's very important to go back and identify where those gaps are in the standards, and also to compare those with the EAC report. And I think that that's a priority to get that completed. I don't know how much time we have, or if other people feel that that's also a priority.
We'll continue to gather some input here. Greg Vanderheiden and then Joel. Greg?
Yeah, 2 comments. One, I agree on the face-to-face. I think if we have fewer of them and have them put far enough out in the future that people can block that on their calendar, I think it's really great. As we get to pulling some of these results together, these reports, et cetera, I think it might be good to have face-to-face when we get around to signing on them and things like that. And the second was that on the TTY and PSTN, I agree that this is a really key area, and there are some that have talked about, well, why don't we just get rid of the TTYs right now, and not realizing, of course, that there's nothing that works for those people who are stuck on the PSTN. So something that talks about the need for the TTY while we have a PSTN, how we're going to handle it, and then it's a really good chance for consumers and industry to work together again, because everybody would like to move away from TTY, but PSTN, we don't currently have a solution for how you would communicate if you don't have it, but trying to provide a gateway at every TTY or every VoIP to PSTN intersection, is a problem, et cetera. So we need to really sit down and look seriously and get some people who are interested in not just talking about the problems, but figuring out how to actually create a map forward so that we don't leave people basically cut off. But we also recognize that we ought to be trying to figure out, in the grand scheme, how to solve this problem without, just pouring increasing amount of money into something that is eventually going to pass. It would be even good to get some good engineers together to see if there isn't some solution to providing IP to people who are still on PSTN, if you would. So I think this, is something that's a really good team that has people from industry who understand the pragmatics of industry, that has people from the consumer side that understand both the technical but also the logistics issues of even reaching many people who are using these, and the state, equipment plan issues, et cetera, and see if we can't figure out something. And in the process, that same group could look at the issue of what happens when TTY, gets onto an IP network. So I think that all of these things could be looked at together, and I think the FCC would find this enormously useful, because they're going to get more and more comments in about this, and more even misinformation, people trying to solve it who don't understand what the problem is. So our report would even be helpful to getting new ideas by getting people up to speed. So I think that this would be a really great topic to form a subgroup around, and with the FCC looking at PSTN future, this is going to be something that's going to be of interest to them, because it'll keep showing up on that plate too, and they need information. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Sounds like there's some support for this TTY activity. So moving to Joel and then Al. Joel?
Yes, Joel, thank you very much. Just a quick comment. The survey and reports that we've done have really done something else, and that's raised expectations among people who are users who need to use this kind of access to 911. But most of our goals are actually long-term solutions, development of new technology and strategy in the future. I think the fourth item that you mentioned, the short-term mobile solutions, becomes even more important now to provide something now to do things. I know that the FCC now supports significant programs that facilitate communication between people who are deaf, deafblind, and or speech impaired, to facilitate communication with those who are hearing, and could provide 911 access. I think that one of our missions should be developing short-term, doable solutions within the current infrastructure, within the current system, to make things work more efficiently. And I think we have an opportunity to do that. I don't see that as a difficult challenge, just a matter of sitting down and brainstorming and figuring out how can we do what we do now better to make 911 work. And I've been thinking about that for a long time, and I think I have some ideas on that. I do suggest that we have a group meeting within a relatively short period of time just to confirm that with the development of all these groups and subgroups that we're on the right path and to a meaningful path. And then let it go if needed. We don't need to meet quite as often after that. But I think we should have something reasonably short term to make sure we all enter the yellow brick road, clearly, and we're on that path, and then decide later how we're going to handle it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel. Al?
Yes, hello, this is Al here. And I'm from Florida. I just recently came back from the NENA conference as well, a few days ago. And there I learned that as of right now, all PSAPs have TTYs. And we have been in some talking about deaf people with TTYs and the fact that it's phasing out of the deaf communities, but also the importance of the TTYs for the deaf blind people. But we did not discuss that as of today, all PSAPs do have TTYs, and I think we need to take that in consideration when we're talking about their budget constraints. So that is something we need to think about on how to merge the current PSAP system that relies on TTYs, and that's the comment I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Greg?
This is Greg. I think that one of the key things would be to continue to have these meetings fairly regularly, even if most or all people come in by telecom. The reason being that in these subcommittees, I will bet that you can measure the progress based upon when the next time they will have to report out to the main group will be. So with having the people on this group be as busy as they are, and we have an incredibly busy group of people picked for this committee, the progress on the subcommittees and even attendance of the subcommittee meetings is going to fluctuate based upon when it is that the next deliverable or the next report on progress is due. So I would not set up all the committees and just say, well, we'll meet again when the committees are done, because without deadlines and without progress along the line, I don't know that you'll see progress. Or a couple people will meet, and then they'll show up at the meeting, and then the rest of the people didn't meet, and so then you'll have the subcommittee meeting in the full committee, and that won't work either. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Does anybody else have any other items for input? Kevin?
Kevin Green, Verizon. I just wanted to ask, in regards to the summit, is the focus going to be on a particular interim solution, or are we looking at a variety of solutions, or what exactly is the goal of the summit?
This is Cheryl. The event that will probably be in April that will address an interim text solution to 911, interim meaning until NG 911 is deployed, is in the planning. And so I certainly, we would welcome your suggestions and recommendations. Right now, we are aware of several products that are proposing to accomplish text to 911. We have the Addis report. We have the consumer's response to the Addis report. We have the NG 911 rulemaking proceeding going on. And so we will be working to develop an event that will be productive and accomplish something to move the ball forward.
Thank you.
This is David. Just a couple of questions on that as well, since we're talking about it. When you're talking about the event, is it open for, like you said, input? Is there you have something about EAC or panels on there? Are there panels appropriate from industry and consumer groups as well, or is it more of a FCC structured one-day specific guidance, or how open is it?
We're still in the planning stages, so I would, certainly be interested in input and recommendations. Then we can take it all back and plan again. The goal would be to move the ball forward.
And just following up with the scheduling thing, do you have like a date or a couple of dates in mind in April to do this?
Second Friday in April would be my target date right now.
So that's April 13th.
Yes.
Okay. Matt Gerst.
Matt. Hello? No. Okay. Matt Gerst, CTIA. I'll wait because questions for Cheryl and Patrick, and so I'll wait.
Yeah, just.
I just want to clarify one thing. This event is very much in the initial planning stages, and it may just be an event for this group. So we still have yet to talk to the commission about whether it's going to be a commission-wide event or whether it's going to be an EAC event. I think that the goal here is primarily to make sure that this group and the consumers affected by any possible interim measure is fully aware of what the commission is considering. So we still have to vet it, but I didn't want to give any misimpression that this is a done deal. However, we have, if you look at the record, which is open to the public, we have received a number of different ex parte filings and meetings on various approaches to an interim text measure, and we're not sure that everybody here is apprised of these various proposals, and that's the purpose of this meeting, to make sure that those of you who have been working so hard on this issue are fully aware of some of the presentations that have been coming to us.
Matt Gerst.
Matt Gerst of CTI. Thank you, Karen. That's very helpful to sort of have a better understanding of what the goal is. So I think if I understand, the summit will be more of like a tech demo, or will it be a discussion? And the question is, Cheryl mentioned so that the commission can move forward. Does that mean it's going to be anything that's part of that summit would be part of the proceeding record, or would it just be general information for the commission?
Well, those are really good questions. And again, we have to work through all of this. I'm not even sure that it's, as Cheryl pointed out, it may not even be a summit. It might be a round table. It might be just a discussion. I myself have not seen very many tech demos yet. We've had a lot of discussions, so I guess one of the ways that this can go is it could be presentations similar to what we've already received from these groups, but instead to all of you, accompanied by tech demos. I know I would like to see how these various solutions might work. And then I think it's designed to get your feedback. And depending on how that feedback is received, it will either go into the record or be part of the continuing EAC discussion. I don't know whether this would be considered a giant ex parte meeting, or whether it would just be more of having presenters present to you and having a dialogue as part of the EAC. I guess the question is, do you all see a value in doing this? I think that's what Cheryl's trying to to seek out here, whether you are already familiar with all the proposals, or do you see a value in having this? Do you see a value in inviting others in? We have a fairly nice representation here of both consumers and industry, but do you see value in inviting others to be part of this debate in person, and even if they're part of the debate in our docket?
Matt Gersh, CTIA. I think there's a lot of value in this type of a summit. I think the question is whether this forum would provide a sufficient opportunity to provide feedback. For example, I know that there are some presentations already in the record for the NG 911 proceeding.
Right.
It's not clear whether there's been sufficient time for people to come to the table with questions already, or whether we sort of have to come up with questions on the fly, which would be more difficult. So it would almost seem that this would need maybe more than one step in just having the summit and then, moving right into that being it. It sort of require some sort of after analysis or post analysis.
Yeah, you want to answer that? Or I think that's really appropriate. And since your group is continuing to meet, you could provide the foundation for the ongoing feedback to us. Again, I think that the purpose of this was really more not only to get information from you, but to push out information. As you pointed out, and as I mentioned as well, a lot of this is in the docket. But a lot of people don't go to the docket. So it's really, when I say a chance to have discussion, there may be questions on the spot, and then there may be follow-up questions as well. I know that in the meetings that I've been privy to, there are lots of questions that come up right on the spot, and having the people that know these different technologies in the room really helps. That's not to say that we won't have follow-up questions.
This is Greg.
Thank you. I was going to say, go ahead, Greg.
I think some of this also has to do with the how you title it. When I hear summit, it sounds like getting people together to make a decision or announce some agreement or something. If we start off with having tech demo or presentation or something that says what we're really going to do is to have presentations about different approaches, because I think you're absolutely correct. Even people who read the record, and that's all sometimes difficult for many people to figure out how to even find things in it, but people who do read it, a description of a policy document is different than a technical presentation with illustrations or something like this that would allow consumers and technical people both to be able to get an idea for, what would this look like so that consumers who don't understand the technologies can understand how it would impact. And then how would it feel to a consumer to use it, and then technically how would it work? And if those parts, if you had a day where you had the major people come up and do this, and you webcast it, then people, consumers all over the world, including ones who can't get to Washington, would be able to see what these different things are that are being discussed. Questions could be asked at that point, and as you said, follow-up questions could follow afterwards, and the answers posted so that everybody would be able to see them. And I think that would be an incredibly valuable first step toward this. And that also gives people a chance to then go back and think about them, and then come back later with either technical questions or positions or something else. And I don't think you can do that all in one day, because people won't be able to digest. Consumers may want to go back and talk with each other to figure out exactly what they saw, and and to think about what the implications would be, et cetera. So I would suggest perhaps that you start off with what you were describing, maybe with a name other than Summit, to get this out so everybody can get an idea for exactly what these things are being proposed to be.
Thank you, Greg. We have Bob and then Donna. Bob?
This is Bob Mather here. I agree with all of what you have discussed so far. I just want to throw in another idea that I've had. Instead of having a 1 day, why not a 2 day? Maybe a Thursday we could have a demonstration meeting, open presentations, etc., so that we can relax and learn some of these things and get through the process. And the second day, at that time, we can have a meeting in the group and discuss what we've learned from the prior day. So I propose a 2-day meeting.
I think we need to discuss this with public safety and possibly with the chairman's office as well. But thank you. That's an interesting suggestion.
Donna?
Hey, this is Sherry here. I agree with Bob. That idea, that's a good idea.
Thank you, Sherry. Donna?
Yes, this is Donna here speaking. That's a wonderful idea of getting together as a summit, but I do have a concern with NENA. They are hosting 911 to come on out to Washington, D.C. during the last week of March. And I believe I do have a free day on that Thursday or Friday, but that might be some consideration. Have people go there and have the other people go, the FCC go during the same week instead of flying out, staying for the NENA event, then flying back, and then coming back out. You know what I mean? They're just, a couple of weeks apart, so I just thought maybe we could consider that, those dates.
Thank you, Donna. It sounds like there's something at the end of March, and then so
911 goes to Washington.
911 goes to Washington. All right. So there's a few things coming up here. All right. Any other comments or input or questions on? I'm going to call this the April 13th event. Maybe longer, shorter, whatever. But so if you have input, comments, recommendations, proposals for the event, I would send those into Cheryl, Karen, on the proposals for that stuff. So that's probably a lot of discussion about that April 13th. I'm sure there may be some more questions as the day goes along, and so Cheryl's here all day, and you can ask her. One thing I just wanted to go back to, I know we talked about, and there's been some proposals about having meetings, and I like Greg's comments and Joel's and stuff about if we don't have that stuff and we say create a committee and then go off and do the work for these activities, we won't see anything until maybe the end of the year or whatever. So I do like the idea of trying to continue to have some sort of consistent schedule, I'll call it, in terms of having some kind of a meeting, whether that's a face-to-face or it's just a conference call activity. I believe through 2012 we really have, I think, the second Friday of every month sort of as the schedule of events for EAC throughout December, correct? Right. So I think just looking at your calendars, the second Fridays of every month are kind of planned. So I think at least my proposal would be that we continue to keep those dates right now, not from a standpoint of getting together face to face, but the idea that those would be kind of checkpoints in terms of what's going on with these groups, and if there's we can at least monitor the status. Some of them may be complete. Some of these may be very quick activities. Some of these may be just a little longer in terms of the work that may be involved in them. So just kind of just going through that stuff. So I guess the next time date would be sort of this March 9th in there, and I think maybe that might be a good date in terms of when Cheryl puts out the template of the committees, and I think I heard this other one on the subgroup of TTY, so potentially another one. would be probably at least a checkpoint to see that we have membership and kind of a balanced membership for each one of those different groups, sort of the chairs, co-chairs of those, and then we would be able to monitor by April another one. So maybe there's a possibility face-to-face in April in conjunction with the FCC event. So maybe Cheryl can look and see if there's a day that week that can be worked out along those lines. I have a hand raised from Lori Flaherty. So, Lori, I think you have some comments.
Yeah, thank you. I know that for the other advisory group in which I participate for the FCC, there is a monthly call involving the chairs of all of the subgroups giving a progress report. And then we have quarterly in-person meetings. Depending on how much work is involved in each of those working groups, the deadlines are pre-set up front. So some groups, their deadline is the first quarter, some groups, their deadline is the second quarter, etc. I agree with what Greg said, is unless you have a target date, people tend to, extend that. But it also has been very useful to have the chairs of those groups report in on a regular basis, and maybe we could do that on the second Friday of every month, since that time is already slotted, and then go to a less frequent in-person meeting like a quarterly meeting. And then I guess, the report out just depends on what everyone determines the deadlines are for each of those subgroups.
Christian?
This is Christian. I do want to respond to that. I agree with having deadlines for the report. I think that's important. But I just want to remind people that for deaf people participating during conference calls, it can be very frustrating. I think the in-person, face-to-face meetings is really important. And quarterly is not going to be frequent enough. So, but just I'm thinking about the conference calls. It really does not work well for us at all. We're typically going through VRS, and that's often not a good solution. And this is Norman asking, would it be possible to have smaller groups with the deaf folks getting together to speak among each other first, with an interpreter present for those who need it? This is Christian responding. I'm just thinking, regardless of the size of the group, going through online VRS interpreters is often not providing the best accessibility. There's other technical issues involved.
Okay. I was going to let Donna speak as well, and then we'll kind of respond to that. So go ahead, Donna.
Yes, this is Donna here speaking. I'm out here on the West Coast, and I work for a nonprofit, organization, and I can't afford to come on out to the East Coast very often as I would like to. But the best option for me is through the video relay conference, or through the phone and video. So it's really I wouldn't be able to afford to come on out that often and meet in person.
This is Cheryl. Yes, I was going to observe that we got a lot of experience in 2011 with the subcommittees and the Tiger teams and the day-long conference calls. We certainly got a good lesson on the accessibility, the challenges, and the drawbacks from trying to accomplish our work through that means. And Donna certainly speaks to the issue of some valuable folks that are not able to travel as often as they would like to. Go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna go one more time through a little of this. This is David. Just I think one of the things, at least I hear, is we should continue to have these meetings monthly. I'm not going to say face to face yet. I still think there's ways to do this, through conference calls and video calls and different things. But I double back to Lori's comments about monthly meetings just to make sure we're kind of on track for what we're agreeing to do. And then I kind of like the idea of these quarterly type face-to-face activities. From just my perspective of my companies, it will help cost-wise, not the monthly travels. I think there's just those issues as well for everyone, I think. So if we can kind of agree that we would at least hold the second Friday as the EAC meetings, then I think that'll at least put in the ground that we'll have some discussions, whether it's some of the subcommittees or all of the subcommittees. I think that could always be dependent, and we can do that sort of as this committee here on defining who needs to speak at what point. And that will also depend on the subcommittee's schedule. Some of these things may be very straightforward and not take that much time. Others may be more involved and could take the rest of the year in theory for those things. But I'd like to not see anything move into 2013 personally, but I think we'll leave that open to the subcommittees as they discuss the details of their thing. So can we just kind of agree that we will at least hold these second Friday as part of the EAC meetings? And if they are conference calls, they could maybe be done in a couple hours too. Does anybody objects? Let me know.
This is Cheryl. Yes, and for the folks that are in town in D.C., I can certainly set up a meeting room so that there would be some of us that will be together and other parties in the teleconference. That can certainly be done.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay. So we're going to move forward that we have second Fridays set. I think one of the other things is, in addition to the 6 groups that we talked about, which was the sign language assistance, interoperability testing, timeline contingency, the short-term mobile solutions, these deleted sections from the report and recommendations, and identifying the gaps for NENA I3, I heard one additional potential group would be this subgroup on TTY activities. That would be I think I heard that as the 7th group. So if I've missed anything or there's another subcommittee that I missed, please let me know now. Okay. We're going to go with those 7 in there. I think the action was to kind of work up sort of a template for the folks that want to be part of specific groups, and that maybe we can do something like that over the break or something, even thinking about some of that. Additionally, if there's some of these groups that you really want to be on now, you can let us know today. You can email anybody here at the committee, and we can maybe start forming some of that.
We're going to talk about
we're going to talk about all that stuff. Never mind.
This is Greg. There's a tool called Drupal that might be used that would be very easy. You can set it up listing the 7 groups, and then people can sign up and just check off which groups they want to be in, and it would collect it all in a nice fashion. They could even enter their name and the email they would like to use, and you would gather it all in one swell FOOP and save a lot of time from the EAAC staff trying to take all these different emails and get them all straight.
This is Cheryl. Thank you, Greg. I'll look into that.
This is Greg. It also gives the advantage that at any point in time anybody can go up and add or subtract their name from any group, so that it would allow people to to decide to join one later or something, and it could just be used as something that gets referenced.
I have a comment. Al, and then Paul. Al?
Yes, hi, this is Al here. Earlier, we mentioned discussing about face-to-face or talking through a conference call. I'm wondering if it's possible to have a face-to-face, because I would prefer that for the deaf person. It is very difficult to follow the dialogue that occurs through the video relay service system, and also all the screens and videos that have to occur on the same screen. So I would like to keep that in mind. So the face-to-face is nice to have available as well for a conference call for those people who cannot attend.
Thank you, Al. Paul?
Okay, this is Paul Michaelis with Avaya. I hesitate to bring this suggestion up because I know it's outside the scope of the committee, but I would like for us to be considering the economic feasibility of what is proposed. Specifically, if a recommendation is something that might be adopted by our customers outside the 911 domain, it's much more likely that we'd be able to build it in a manner that's economical for 911 centers. And so, again, I would like for us to consider the marketability to non-911 entities for whatever we recommend.
All right. Any other comments in the room or on the bridge or the hand-raising tool?
Go ahead and break for lunch.
Yeah. I think we're probably at a good time where we can probably break for lunch. I think for those here, there is a demonstration, I believe, on the second floor. Cheryl.
This is Cheryl. Yes, that would be an excellent idea. You go out the door, and to the right there is a set of stairs. Just keep going straight, and you run into our FCC library, and go in there, and off to the left is the Technology Center.
All right, thank you, Cheryl. We're going to meet back and start at 1 o'clock, so that'll be an hour and 13 minutes.
Right. Good.
Make sure that it's open. There are people there. Is anyone on the bridge?
Gunnar are here. Yes, we are.
Excellent.
Waiting.
All right. Understood, Gunnar. Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I think we've had lunch. We're going to continue on with sort of the planning activities, but I just wanted to bring up a couple of things on sort of the scheduling of the face-to-face meetings and the monthly meetings a little bit, and we'll just start with that. So one of the things I know we talked about earlier and just wanted to reiterate them is that we will continue to have the monthly meetings. I didn't say face-to-face yet. I said we'll continue to have the monthly meetings on the second Friday and use those as these checkpoints and working activities and status and stuff. So we'll do that. We had talked a little bit here about face-to-face meetings, and right now we're proposing a face-to-face meeting on June 8th and September 14th would be 2 face-to-face meetings. And then the next item would be is that October, November, and December, we're going to leave as TBDs. And if all activities are done by the September meeting, there will be no need to have any monthly meetings or quarterly meetings or any face-to-face activities in the last 3 months of the year. The September date would be September 14th, second Friday, and the other face-to-face would be June 8th. Richard?
I just want to caution everyone that there's going to be a National Emergency Association conference happening in Long Beach on June 9th through the 14th. So I would like to take that into consideration when planning for our face-to-face meetings, Because I think there are quite a few people who will be attending that conference, the NENA conference. So maybe we should choose an alternate date for that proposed June meeting.
This is David, I guess. Okay, so there's something in that same week and starting the 9th. We could. We don't want to have any face-to-face in July or August, thinking that's definitely the holidays for most of us. But we could propose May 11th as a face-to-face, and that might not be a bad idea. That might go back to sort of the comments that Joel made earlier on getting everybody together as soon as possible to make sure we're in line with the activities and agreeing on the work we're going to do. Karen?
So if you're talking about a meeting in person in May, are you also talking about a meeting in person in April for the form? Let me just tell you some of the side conversations that we were having during the break. What we're thinking now is because the primary purpose, this is Karen, because the primary purpose of the event that we were talking about earlier is to push information out to you that we have received here. We agree with Greg that this is less of a summit where we would be coming to conclusions than it would be a forum. So if we called it a forum, we think it would be probably make the most sense, since we already have times carved out for your meetings, to do this at one of your regularly monthly meetings, but expand upon it just a little bit by having you and having us invite others to sit in the audience so they could also get this information. And we were thinking about April, although we're open to April or May, but that would definitely be an in-person meeting. To assist you in response to Bob Mather's concerns about being able to, and your concerns as well, Matt's concerns, sorry, momentary lapse. Matt's concerns about being able to respond to the group's proposals. What we're thinking about doing is either sending you in advance their proposals that they've submitted to us, or even asking them to take it a step further and asking them to summarize those proposals in bullets, I don't know, voluntarily if they want to, or just providing some means of having you have the information about what those proposals are in advance. You can then send in questions in advance that we could send to them so they could be prepared to respond. Or you can just have those questions ready for when they get here. That way we would not need a 2-day meeting, but you would be fully apprised of what they have put before us and be prepared to talk to them at the event. So if this sounds okay with you, then I think that we would proceed with contacting these various vendors and asking them to participate in such an event in either April or May. So I don't know if you want to throw that out for comment. Are there any feedback on that?
Matt Gross, CTI. So thank you, Karen. I think that makes a lot of sense, providing advance notice of who's going to be at the meeting. I think the question I also had was, how are you going to be determining who's going to be presenting? Is it only people who are currently have already submitted solutions into the record, or is the commission going to be going out and asking, basically doing an RFP, and asking for people to send in solutions? Because I know that there are solutions that were in the record, but then there's maybe an app provider. Somebody's got some ideas that, you want to make sure you're covering all the bases. So
I think we'd want to talk to, this is Karen, I think we'd want to talk to public safety about that. I'm not sure that, I doubt we'd be issuing an RFP. I mean, the notice is already out. So, the request for proposals is already out. In the form of it's a notice of proposed rulemaking, right? So anybody can already have submitted information, and anybody that would want to present, if you know of entities that might want to present and can direct them to us, that would be fine. But I think we need to explore that a little bit more. We don't want to leave anybody out. I'm not saying that it would only be the 4 entities that have already come into us, but those are the 4 that come to mind at this time. This is an open advisory committee. Anybody can request making a presentation to us at any time. But we would try to get the word out that we are going to be offering these presentations to this group and leaving the door open for others to participate.
This is Greg. A couple comments on dates. First, if the meeting was in Washington in June and the other meeting is the next day in Florida, it seems that may actually help people with travel budgets because they could combine a meeting in Washington on Friday and then fly down and be there for the meeting on Saturday, starting on Saturday in Florida, if I understood the dates right. So that would be a way of coordinating in a fashion that might actually help people's travel budgets. On my May calendar, I had the EAAC meeting as being on the 18th rather than the 11th. Now, that may have been a mistake, or it may have been that there was some other conflict on the 7th. I would like to suggest that we not do, however, a major meeting in Washington on the 18th, since that conflicts with the World Summit of the Information Society, and it would be good for people who are interested in participating accessibly around that to also be able to participate in this effort as well that you're doing in Washington. So if it's going to be on the 11th, that would work. But if that's a conflict and it was bumped to the 18th for some reason, then that would conflict with WSIS. Thank you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to respond. I'm getting people signing to me that Gallaudet's graduation is on the 11th of June, so that's probably not going to work. But also, I think that we need, May 11th. Okay, that's helpful, sorry. I think that we would like to have this in April. I think that sooner is better because we have an open proceeding. So if we can do it in April, that would be helpful. Richard.
This is Richard here. Just a point of clarification. The annual conference that I was speaking of is in Long Beach in California, so it's not in Florida. Just to clarify, if you're talking about people combining their travel budgets, that may impact them.
This is David. I'm going to jump in. I have Sherry, Norman, and Christian comments. So Sherry.
Yes, this is Sherry here. Thank you. I'm in support of having a 2-day meeting in April. And I do still support Bob's idea. We want to be able to, be comfortable getting all the information, sharing from the different organizations and groups, presentations, whatever you want to call it. And then the second day, continue the meeting. I think that makes sense, and I think that would help us better prepare, and we can be prepared for in-depth discussion. So that's what I'm thinking, and I think you're correct. May and June, and July even, none of those are good months for the second Friday. It doesn't sound like it's going to work for any of those months. Okay?
Thank you, Sherry. I don't know if you want to respond to the April issue or something. I think that input's been received, and I think as everybody goes through that right now, I still think it's a one-day event, but I think the comments of a couple of days has been heard. So I think as the details get worked out, you'll know. So, Donna? Donna Platt?
Oh, hello. This is Donna speaking. And I just wanted to let you know that Nina is hosting the 911 going to Washington. And during the last week of March, So I don't know if that's too much trouble for the
forum.
For the forum.
Maybe.
The
last week of March.
Because we're trying to bring it back
Earlier.
Having that 911 event in Washington.
Well, this is Karen. Thank you, Donna. We'll look into that.
People might leaving and coming back might be enough.
That's very helpful. Thank you. This is Karen, and we're going to look into that. See, it pushes it up a little bit, but that may make a lot of sense.
All right, this is David. Making sure I'm not too confused on where we are right now. I think one of the comments we've been talking sort of about this face-to-face. I think the only thing I think I understand right now is that September 14th still sounds like a good face-to-face, but May 11th seems to be a conflict for graduations, and June would be trouble for people coming from Washington for the face-to-face June 8th, and then having to head to California for the NINA conference in Long Beach, California. So that's a cross-country. So maybe Cheryl and I we'll talk a little bit more about that. Maybe we move something to the 18th or something. But I think everybody's going to have to look at the schedules and see what's available and all that. So we don't really know another time, and then maybe there's something in around the April frame. So there's a few open issues. I don't have an answer for the specific face-to-face. So the only thing I really know is that we will still have the monthly second Friday calls, and maybe May 11th may have a little conflict that I understand there, so we'll just leave that open until we can determine sort of what the subcommittees are doing. And again, we will have a face-to-face on the 14th of September. I think that still sounds okay for everyone. And then the remainder of the year, October, November, and December, are tentative dates. There may not be a need for anything those months, and again, there may be some activities that we come out of that still have to be completed. But the intent is that we don't have anything in 2013. That's just my input, and I think Cheryl's too. She's looking at me, so we'll go through that stuff and see what the schedules. And we've got a lot of feedback from everybody for different things happening in March and April and stuff. So we just need to clarify those and get that communication out as soon as we can to everyone so people can schedule. So right now, the only thing I can tell you is plan the second Friday, at least having some sort of a call or something. I think that summarizes some of the schedule stuff.
It puts us in a perspective. Okay.
Sherry?
Yes. I'm wondering, when we're talking about the presenters, is it possible for presenter USDJ and USDOT related to their collaboration with our efforts? How, if they could talk about what they're doing, what kind of consensus was come to in the collaborative, does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
This is Karen. Sherry, are you suggesting that amongst the presenters that we invite the Department of Justice and the Department of Transportation?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you for that suggestion. This is Karen again.
Okay.
Are there any other comments or questions from anyone on the schedule? All right. What's next on the agenda?
More planning.
More planning. So you want to go through those things a little bit?
This is Cheryl. Let's see if we can flesh out the assignment areas. referring back to the 4 areas in the recommendations that we deferred until 2012 to complete the sections that we pulled out of the report and recommendations. The TTY, the CSRIC transition, CSRIC working group. David, did you say you had some information on the CSRIC working group transition coordination from Brian?
Yeah,
Just that he would.
I'm going to speak for Brian Daly quickly. I know Brian said he would be willing to be one of the co-chairs on one of the groups, and I think the one would be this TTY subcommittee thing. I think that's what I understand. Brian, please confirm.
Thank you, David. This is Brian Daly. Yes, I would be willing to help co-lead one of the subcommittees, whether it be the standards or TTY, whichever one is most interested, most in need.
Thank you, Brian. I see your hand was up too. So.
And this is Sherry speaking again. What subcommittees are you talking about? That second one says TTY and what?
Yeah, this is Cheryl. The CSRIC. It's another FCC advisory committee.
Can you spell that for the interpreter?
CSRIC. It's Reliability and Interoperability Council. Patrick?
Communications, Security, Reliability, and Interoperability Council.
Thank you.
Brian Daly, and then Christian.
Yes, thank you, David. This is Brian again. One of the things, I think one of the areas we had were this I3 comparison area, which I think is related to that CSRIC work, which I was involved in. So that might be one of the areas, I definitely raise my hand for and volunteer. Thank you.
We combine those two.
Christian? That was Brian Daly. Yeah, that was Brian Daly speaking.
And now Christian?
Christian?
This is Christian speaking, and I'd be more than happy to join in with the efforts working on the I3 standards related with the EAC committee.
This is just David. Yeah, thanks, Brian, for clarifying. I think the CSRIC discussion was part of this NENA I3 discussion and not part of the TTY group. So there's still this TTY subcommittee, I think, still is one of the other groups. I have Greg and then Donna. Greg?
This is Greg. If we have 7 of these groups and a large number of people, would it make more sense for people to offline write in and say which ones they would be interested in participating in and which ones they might help lead, and then you can look at all the names and all of the committees and then try and figure out how you're going to distribute things like that. And people could also indicate whether they really would like to lead something or whether they're willing to lead something, if you want to have some measure of intention or desire. It just sounds like it might get pretty complicated by the time you try to figure it out, and some people may not be on the call who would like to participate, and things like that.
Yeah. This is Cheryl. Yes, Greg. I think that's what we're planning to do. Send out some information and ask people to give us their preferences and desires on what working group efforts they would expend their time for the EAC. Thank you. Donna?
Hi, Donna speaking here. I would like to participate in the sign language assistance line. And Also, I wanted to let you know it's not only sign language, but also communications as well, for people who are speech disabled. And so that should be called Sign Language and Communications Assistance Line.
This is Cheryl. Thank you, Donna. Cheryl, again, do we need to flesh out what the issues are on the interoperability testing, the second recommendation P 3.3, so that everybody could understand more what that working group will be charged with accomplishing? That recommendation was recommends that the FCC define policies and regulations which require originating and other service providers, emergency service network providers, vendors, developers, and manufacturers of systems to perform regular testing necessary to verify interoperability of accessibility-related communication formats.
This is Greg.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yes, this one came out of a discussion when we were working on the recommendations. There was a recommendation for end-to-end testing, and people from industry pointed out that although that's a nice goal, the logistics of just trying to do every product, end-to-end across every system was not practical, feasible, technically achievable. And this seemed to be absolutely correct on examination. Also, there was a concern about how you do testing with PSAPs without inundating them with fake calls, and so it was determined that this was really important to having the system actually work, but a simple, straightforward answer of just test it all didn't work. So the goal of this committee, so we decided to just recommend that something needed to be developed and to kick it into this next phase of our committee to sit down with consumers and industry to figure out what is something that would actually work and provide the necessary end-to-end testing without doing that which is not practical or helpful. So that was the purpose of this committee, was to try to work out something that was effective and yet reasonable.
This is Cheryl. Thank you, Greg, for that explanation. Matt Gerst?
Matt Gerst, CTI. Greg, could you remind us about the end-to-end testing? Was this the issue with respect to end users testing 911, or was this the issue related to industry testing of interoperability? I'm not sure I'm clear whether we're trying to merge the two issues or it's actually the same issue.
This is Greg. That's actually an excellent question. It was primarily about the requirement, the suggestion that, or the recommendation that industry be required to do end-to-end testing, and if they were going to be required to do something, it had to be something that made sense and was reasonable for industry to do. In conjunction with that, however, there was also raised the issue of users get a phone and they're not sure how to do it. They're not sure if this is going to work. If you're going to do SMS to 911 and you're not sure what it is, or you're supposed to, whatever it is you're supposed to do, if you've never called 911 and you just want to try it to make sure that in fact it works or works in your area, how do you do that without triggering a fake 911 call? So the second issue you raised that I didn't mention before was one that we also thought the same group would look at, but it is a quite different, but perhaps not completely different question.
This is Cheryl. If I could ask Richard or Christian, who work with Nina, is the user testing something that Nina is looking at? Whether or not learning to use 911, could be part of an occupational or physical therapy even regiment, and maybe we could get the state equipment distribution programs involved if there were to be some way in the future for consumers to experience calling 911 without there being an emergency. So is that on Nina's radar? Anyone?
And Christian referring to Richard, this is Richard saying that Donna Platt and myself have done a number of tests using specific equipment technologies, VRS or video phones, or IP relay. And there's been a few that we've been able to observe through demonstrations, but actually doing the test call is different than what we've been doing. We weren't able to have kind of the full demonstration to see how it would work when an actual call was placed, how the system would work when an actual call was placed to 911.
Right. Thank you, Richard. Christian?
Yes, this is Christian. And I'd also like to add that at the NINA conference, we had a meeting about the issue of education and outreach to individuals with special needs. So I don't know if that's part of the NINA official policy, but I know that they are at least a little bit looking at the issue. Perhaps it's not enough. And Richard responding. They're looking at the technical part and also looking at the operations that would be included with the educational part. So there's a working group that's focusing on the educational component, and there are various areas within that. So that's the part that we need to check into more.
This is Cheryl. I guess, Greg, clarifying it will bring it back down to this recommendation for interoperability testing does seem to be focused on industries testing and affirmation that their systems are working properly and interoperable. The issue of the consumer being able to test, learning how to call 911, I believe would be separate, and it is another one of our recommendations toward the end in the education and outreach section, I believe.
This is Greg.
Go ahead, Greg, and then Sherry.
Yep. Sorry, I lost my hand raising tool. Cheryl, I would suggest that we put both topics in the same group. The reason is twofold. One is it's likely to have all of the same people be in both groups. At least the same experts will be needed in both groups. And for scheduling and everything, the topics are going to overlap. So to prevent just a lot of repeating, I think it might be good to put them in the same group since they are going to be somewhat closely related. They can be handled as two topics and two report outs, if you would. But having too many groups all trying to schedule without running over the top of each other is already going to be a problem. But having two groups that have almost the same set of people, it might be better to combine them.
Thanks, Greg. Sherry?
Yes, this is Sherry here. Just really briefly, this is Sherry speaking. Also, I just wanted to mention that in terms of the consumers part of it, we need to keep that separate from the other parts. So, also, I really can't help it, but I can't help to wonder, but if perhaps we need to have, in terms of the NINA, have NINA come and give a presentation from the PSAP representative, and then we'd be able to continue to talk about what if, all the what ifs involved. And so I think that it might be time to maybe pull in a different group of people with different in terms of the role that's involved. So I'm just trying to give some specific kind of, some specific kind of presentation that would be used by USDOJ, Department of Justice, and maybe we could have both scheduled the same day.
This is Cheryl. Thank you, Sherry and Greg. Let me take that under advisement, and I'll discuss it with the other co-chairs and see what we can accomplish on that particular area. On the issue of the interoperability testing, could I hear from somebody in industry about whether this is something that is on your radar? Is it on the FCC's radar that you're aware of? Is this something that is going to be a new issue for us to explore? Jim Nixon, thank you.
Are you talking about the interoperability testing from end to end, like to each PSAP? Because that's where the big problem in my mind comes in, because PSAPs have different configurations. Mm-hmm. What industry typically does, and the technical people here can back me up or straighten me out, what industry typically does is tests to a certain set of standards, and then they know that if they meet those standards, as the sending party and the receiving party meets those standards, then they should work together. They typically will test those things physically to make sure that it works. I just don't know enough about it to tell you whether that's done on every piece, every time.
Okay. Paul?
This is Paul Michaelis with Avaya. If we're talking about voice communication, there are accepted engineering standards that ensure interoperability. A lot of the services that are being proposed here for Next Generation 911, there are so many different ways to do the type of communication being requested. Just as an example, so many different ways to do real-time text that in the absence of everybody agreeing on a specific protocol that we'll be supporting, it's going to be a disaster trying to do interoperability testing.
Okay. I think we have Bob and then Mark.
This is Bob Mather here. I know that the PSAP has a standard operating procedure, and that requires a self-testing to make sure that their system is in the center and that works properly. Under Title II, the DOJ says the performance test must make sure that the voice calls go through, as well as testing the TDY calls to make sure they go through. So I don't know if it's the same test they use as in the industry, the PSAP in the industry. I don't know if that's the same test, but the PSAPs do self-testing on their own equipment and all of the systems that they have and what they use to work through. So we have to find out what that is to support the industry.
Mark?
This is Mark Stern from Purple Communications, and I wanted to bring a perspective as a relay provider, because as you know, we build apps for different devices, mobile devices, laptops, and hardware devices. And currently for the 911 process, obviously we're going through the relay center, with the recommendations that go from the PSAP to use the sign language assistance, we have to reconfigure our apps to be able to support that call. And my understanding is the expectation is tied to the end user's call, and then we have to change on our end because the customer is using, any kind of VRS app that they choose to use. And if the model changes where the call goes to the PSAP directly and then an interpreter is brought in, obviously there would have to be software for the VRS user, and that would have to be changed on our end to make sure that happens. So we just have to keep that in mind.
This is Cheryl. Thank you for all that input. Let's move to discuss the completion of the sections that were deleted from the report and recommendations. When we got down to the wire in November, we still wanted to work on the recommendations and improve them and reach consensus where we could. And so it was agreed upon that we would pull out, I think there are 4 or 5 sections from the deep middle of the original draft. And I pulled that out, and I can tell you that one of the sections was the media types, and again, we created an outline very early on, and so these sections were identified in that original outline for writing the EAC report and recommendations. So the section that was on media types, devices, and environments involved in 911 calls by individuals with disabilities. So we created a very comprehensive list of media types, examples of communication modes, environments, excuse me, user experience, thumbing through the document that's 73 pages long. Types of calls. This is in these sections we had the diagrams of various architectures, network, etc. Excuse me. The transport, system overview. We members of the EAC put a lot of work into this, and I'm sure that it would be useful and valuable. A section on accessibility, features, and technologies. And so I would hate to lose the work that we did. Can I generate any interest in members to work on completing those sections?
So we have a Greg Vanderheiden.
Yes, we have a large number of comments and stuff that came in, and we also have a committee that was formed to, sort of work through those, and that did work through all of the rest of the parts, the recommendations, etc. Might I suggest that we reconvene that group to continue its work and just finish it up with these other sections, and then bring back the results to the full committee. If somebody else would really love to participate in those sessions, they could join, but they're pretty. But at least that was a good group. We've gone through, and I think a lot of the ideas and concepts and stuff that we were sort of figuring out how to handle, et cetera. So I think that would be the most efficient group to try to go through and work through the rest of the edits and stuff that we already have stacked up. We have enough, different people commenting on the same place, and that we can't just sort of put all the edits in and show it to people because they would have overlapping edits. But I think that might be a way of handling it. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Gunnar?
Yes, Gunnar here. I was away for a minute, so I don't exactly know what you were talking about, but I guess it was about the sections we dropped by the end. I noticed that it was not lucky that we had parallel actions by the policy group and the technical group, and we did not really look at the requirements from the policy group when we composed the technical parts. And we should really merge that now, check that we have everything captured in a nice way in the policy part, and bring it on into the technical part, and not have a lot of overflow information in the technical part that we have now. So yes, if that was what you were discussing, I'm interested.
Okay, this is Cheryl. All right. Another one of our areas, this is Cheryl, is that recommendation P6.3, timeline contingency. EAC recommends that NG 911 implementation timelines for product manufacturers, service providers, telecommunication, and advanced communication service providers are aligned with the deployment of NG 911 PSAPs geographically. Is there a discussion on that issue? Cheryl, that area could help us identify the roadmap for how we get to NG 911 and then how we transition into NG 911. I believe that there have been discussions about that in an informal way, but it may be helpful for us to provide guidance to the FCC on what those steps are and the sequences for the various tracks of a deployment of NG 911. So do I have any interest in working on that area? I see Kevin Green shaking his head, nodding his head. Very good, Kevin. Thank you. Got somebody to focus on. Donna? Donna Platt, you have your hand raised?
Yes, this is Donna speaking. I might be a little bit off track, but from my discussions with people at the NENA conference, some areas don't have access to the internet. Some of them just don't have it, period. Their areas just don't have coverage. And that's my understanding, that if the FCC is working on
National Broadband.
The National Broadband Plan, that's my understanding, is that they're working on that. Secondly, there's a lot of concern with money to run the 911 services, and I don't think that's in the FCC's area. maybe DOJ's area. But that's just some things that I had.
Cheryl here. Yes, thank you, Donna. Those are two of the important issues that will be in any discussion on a timeline contingency. Has Bob left, or did he just leave the room? Okay, he'll be back in a minute. But now that we should have some understanding of what the issues are involved in that recommendation for continuing work. We did skip a discussion on, Cheryl here again, the sign language and other communication assistance. The recommendation said EAC recommends that the FCC and DOJ work together to create policy that PSAPs must employ sign language interpreters or assisted services that provide interpreters fully trained in emergency situations subject to both emergency and interpreter certification standards. I believe we had a core group back when we were developing the recommendations. We had a core group that seemed to have a pretty good understanding about the issues involved in this area. And I believe Al Sonnenstrahl and Richard Ray and Bob Mather were certainly part of those discussions. Richard?
Richard Ray here. Also, a recommendation that Donna Platt be involved as well, if she's willing to be involved.
Go ahead, Donna.
This is Donna. Yes, I would be happy to join. Yes.
Cheryl here. Thank you, Donna. Cheryl here. The remaining recommendation for continued attention in 2012 deals with the short-term mobile solutions, whether we use short-term or interim or what we can use to text to the PSAP before NG 911. The EAC recommendation was that the FCC work with the Department of Justice, industry, academia, consumer groups, and public safety entities to develop an interim solution that can be rapidly deployed to provide nationwide access to 911 services through industry standards-based mobile text communication solutions to provide critical coverage during the transition to NG 911. Can I have a discussion from the floor about some of the issues that are involved there that we have discussed in smaller group settings, or shall we just defer all that to the planning for the April event?
Matt Gerst.
Matt?
This is Matt Gerst, CTIA. So, I think that was certainly the plan when we discussed this previously. I think the question is whether it's sort of been overtaken by events, meaning that the Commission's clearly working on these sorts of issues right now, and with the forum or summit that's going to be happening in the next few months, whether there's still a need for this group to meet, because it sounds like some of the things, if this group were to do work for the next year, let's say, on discussing and coming up with recommendations, and they came to some decision at the end of the year, would that, where would that information go at that point? Because it would seem like from at that point, at the end of the year, we may be well past where that group had already come to a decision on. So I think that's just something that we should discuss.
Greg Vanderheiden?
Yeah. First, I think one of the things we should do is sort of clarify whether or not these groups that we're forming are all supposed to not come to any conclusion for a year, or if the goal is to get their work done as quickly as possible. I think everything we're doing is in active participation or active consideration by the FCC. So the only reason we moved it past December at all for any of these topics was simply we just ran out of time. But I think it might be good for us to bear in mind that we should get this information to the FCC as quickly as possible for all these topics. And if we can wrap up our work before the end of the year, that's great. But if we put in our minds that we all have till the end of the year to do this, we can pretty much guarantee that nothing will happen in the first 6 months. On this specific topic, I think that the FCC would really love to see something that came out of this group that it gathered to talk about emergency communications, that was anything like a consensus on this topic. They're now being given input from a dozen different directions. I agree that this meeting, this demonstration that's coming up would be enormously helpful to our work, but I think the FCC would love to hear from this group what it thinks about all of this myriad of different proposals and approaches that are coming in, and if it could get it in a report that says, well, here are the different things, and here's what we think are the pros and cons of each, in one document versus having to dig that out of the filings of all of the members of the EAAC separately, combined with the filings of everybody else. I think that would be a much harder task for them. So I think this is one of the most valuable ones. It may be one of the tougher ones, but I think we have all of the people here to work out all of the issues and things, and that the FCC would love to have that as input. So it may be tough, but I can't think of a better group of people to help weigh it back and forth and get everything down together in one place.
Thank you, Greg. I'll have a response in a second. But Sherry Farini, Sherry?
I also wanted to say that I agree with what Greg was just speaking of. I agree. I think it's important, and sure, we did run out of time with our discussion, and now we have a short term to work with, but it is a hot topic. It's a hot issue, and for the consumers out there who are deaf and or disabled, time ticking away, the clock is ticking. It's a hot issue. We need to resolve it yesterday.
Thank you, Sherry. This is David. I guess this seems to be sort of a hot topic. Maybe the question to the FCC is that if this was one of the recommendations they wanted some input on, like how soon are you expecting? I think there's two things coming. There's an event in April, and would there be some value of some EAC making something in this area, and when would you need it? I mean, it sounds like it's a very compressed schedule. And
as far as scheduling, I of course can't go into too much detail on that.
Announce your name.
Oh, sorry. Patrick Donovan. Yeah, as far as scheduling, I can't go into too much information on that. We are moving quickly, but we're not going to have NG 911 solved this year. So I think information that you can get us, even if it's at later this year, would be very helpful in the proceeding. I think the discussion is helpful, getting the group of stakeholders together. But as far as the actual schedule of our next step in the proceeding, I can't really speculate on that right now.
Hi, Joel Zev.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I had mentioned earlier in this meeting that we really have raised expectations for services for people who are deaf, deafblind, and so forth, who need to reach 911 and do have access through a computer. I'm very disappointed that if we do a timeline that has a meeting and we don't do anything till the end of the year, we've really lost something. Many of us were working very diligently last year before the report was done towards this end, and then that got put aside. And to put it aside for another full year, I think would be very, very unfortunate. I would like to see some discussions. There are really good people around this table that could make some very clear recommendations, cost-effective recommendations to help 911 work now, and then later on something else would happen. I said this earlier. I'm just repeating myself. GA.
Karen?
I think that's on point. I mean, this committee was only chartered for 2 years. We could possibly extend it, but the request by Congress in CVAA was to get comprehensive recommendations on how next generation 911 technologies can meet the needs of people with disabilities. So to the extent that you can provide us with as much information as you can within the time of your tenure, it would be really helpful to us. Even if we don't use it right away, having it would be enormously helpful.
Thanks, Karen. Go ahead, Greg.
One of the things I think that we can do that could be helpful, this is Greg, is that we can create a working document. And in the working document, we can put the things that we have consensus on, and if there are areas that we don't, then we can put, alternate views. But even this, sometimes it's hard to figure out what people agree on. And I've often found that we've sat in meetings in lots of groups that I'm in, and had long debates, and people think there's like no common ground. But if you actually gather it up, you find out that there's 80% common ground, and there's only 20% that's the issue. And that really helps to get people to focus back on that. So, and I think it would be helpful to the FCC to be able to see that as well, because they can't always see, because nobody ever talks about what they agree on. They only talk about what they disagree on. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. Bob?
This is Robert Mather. I think that our committee has an obligation here to work on this. We haven't completed this yet, especially on the short-term solution. I think we can file a supplemental report. Perhaps not a consensus an agreement report, but something that we can add as an addendum and complete this job.
This is David. This recommendation seems to be popping out as something that's kind of at the top of the list here. Maybe there's just a couple of ways to approach this thing too. Sounds like we have sort of this cross group of Department of Justice, industry, and all that. I was just wanted to throw out maybe a thought. Just if we were to break this to two sections, one would be a technical only type discussion, not technical in a sense of standards, but the preferred way that the consumer would like to use it, the direct contact and all that, and stay away from any policy stuff, and then take it to the policy look at it too. And then that may be one way of looking at it, just take out all the policy issues. Sometimes my ideas from last year is that we kind of were always trying to work both of them at the same time, and sometimes it looked like they conflicted and it just kind of stalled for certain reasons. And there may be a technical only solution, but there may be policy reasons why it just can't be done. And if we just kind of separated those, just as an idea, I'm not saying this is the way to do it, possible of just looking at something independently and then another independent look, some sort of a sequential review or something. Just an idea. Greg Vanderheiden?
Yeah, this is Greg. Could you explain a little bit more about what you mean by policy I'm in my head. I'm not sure where the line is, since everything we're doing is a recommendation to the FCC about what they should do for regulations, and that sounds like it's all policy. But you clearly had some bright line in the middle. Are you talking about sort of identifying what the technical feasibility issues are, separate from the reasonable and achievable kinds of things, or what? How did you sort technical from policy? Thanks.
This is David. Just to reply, I probably haven't sorted it all. I was just thinking more from a practical way of doing something that says we can go do a solution in this method. Say it's just this SMS to 911 direct, period. And then from a policy perspective, there may be reasons why you can't do that from a policy perspective. And it's just trying to separate the two issues. I know they combined at some point, but sort of a practical and economical way, and then the policy perspectives of it, because those sometimes may drive other reasons why you can't do stuff. And I'm not familiar with state rules and some of the federal issues on this as well, and they probably have some impact. I think it's just a matter of kind of drafting that. It was just an idea that needs to be drafted out and presented to make sure it's kind of that way. Doesn't mean it's the only way to do this. It was just an idea. Sherry?
This is Greg. Thanks. Hi. Yeah, this is Sherry here. I want to support what Bob just said in regards to finishing our job. We have to finish our job, and we have to make it a priority that we are to focus on moving up in terms of a timeline some of the meetings, I think, even though really we have to think about getting this done, and I'm not sure if in terms of agreeing with the various groups or having different groups. I don't know if I fully understand what Greg was trying to say in terms of that. So please bear with me for a moment, because I don't have that information in front of me. I think you're talking about 7 different groups. You keep talking about 7 different groups, and I don't know what those groups are exactly that you're speaking of. I understand the difference between some of the, well, what's the difference between those groups? You're talking about a technology group and the policy group, and all of that. So I wouldn't mind it if there could be some clarification in regards to that, please. Thank you.
This is Cheryl. Yes, thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, I will get something out to the group on what these issue areas are. Peter?
Yeah, this Peter Musgrove from AT&T. I know there's been a lot of talk about the urgency of this particular, the short-term mobile solutions item, and I was just going to ask, why are we waiting until April to do this? Is there any way we could do this March 8th and 9th, make it 2 days, as Bob had suggested earlier, rather than April 12 and 13?
This is Sherry, and I just want to reiterate that I totally agree with that.
This is Cheryl, that only gives us 30 days to put it together. I'll have to think about that, whether or not reasonably think.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it hard if you can do an RFP type of thing to send something out to maybe unknowns right now and expect them to reply back, then that's difficult. But if you really have, 3, 4, 5 solutions that you sort of know about already and you want to get those, and send something out, give those folks a couple weeks to get their presentations in, so everybody has a couple weeks maybe ahead of the meeting to analyze them even before that March 8 and 9 deal.
This is David. Peter, you're talking about for the next EAAC meeting? Or are you talking about
the next potential EAAC, which I think March 9th had been penciled in?
Oh, correct.
And I was saying 8 and 9 just to comply with the seemingly good idea that Bob and others have supported to extend this to 2 days rather than just 1.
This is Cheryl. We have been reminded that Nina Goes to Washington is the last week of March. I know that several of our people are involved in that, but rather than doing it on the 8th and 9th, if we looked at doing it that last week of March, when people are already here, Donna Platt, for instance, will probably come to the Nina Goes to Washington, so she would be here in person, and she hasn't often been able to be here in person. Richard will be in town for that too. Karen, I don't know. Patrick, do you think we could try to put something together for the last week of March?
This is Karen. I think I would have to look at my calendar, but it's very possible that we could do it. I mean, there's a real incentive to try to do it.
Okay. Well, let's ponder on that, and I'll get something back out to you just as soon as possible, probably Monday, on that. But that's an excellent suggestion, Peter, and it does go with what else we've heard already. So thank you for that. If we can move to a call for public comment, then we can come back and stay as long as we want or leave early. So unless anyone has a burning question, I'll call for public comment. Is there any comment from the audience? Okay, I don't see anyone. All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is Sherry here.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Okay, thank you. I would like to say, as a member of the EAC, that we all work so hard throughout the year, and several of us spend a lot of time and money to go to these meetings. And I think, second of all, in terms of the last 4 months, I think many times we were working really round the clock on our tasks. And especially people like Greg, who has co-chaired various committees, and many people really who have given their heart and soul in terms of the effort that has been brought forth. And I'm very, very disappointed with the industry coming out in the end to counter what we all have been working on together. And it feels like it needs to be said that we need to get ready for this next year, and I want to see the integrity maintained in terms of the members of the EAC, and I want to see the people who are there, and that the purpose and the reason is to find a resolution, to find solutions. And I don't want to end up that being in 2012 having this kind of opposition presented from the industry. I think there are some industry members of the industry, who cannot put up with or tolerate our type of consensus or agreement, and they should not be at the table if that's the case. So I think that we have to work together to find resolution, to find solutions. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. This is David. I lost the hand-raising tool, so if somebody does have their hand up and wants to speak up, please speak up.
This is Greg. It is empty.
Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, no, I called for it.
Okay.
This is Greg. The hand-raising tool is empty.
Yeah, no, thank you, Greg.
if you all stay in your seats, I'll come around with your certificates, and you have the opportunity to have a fancy, shiny FCC folder, if you'd like one, to take home. Come into the middle of the room,
Fancy, shiny FCC
and you may continue a discussion of any issue.
I think we're done, aren't we? Maybe this is David, just as a final wrap-up, are there any other open discussion items that anybody here wants to bring up that maybe we didn't cover through the recommendations group or anything along those lines? Peter?
Peter Musgrove from AT&T. Do we know if we're going to have that March 9th?
Make sure you again.
Do we know if we're going to have the March 9th meeting of the EAAC, regardless of the summit aspect of it?
Yeah, this is David. The plan is to hold monthly EAAC meetings. The idea whether they're face-to-face or just by conference of some sort is to be determined. The only face-to-face one we had scheduled, I think, that we all agreed with was September 14th. And I think we're having some debate on the May or June time period. I think there were some conflicts with the June 8th, and there was also conflicts with May 11th, I think, from graduations. So that could possibly move to May 18th, but I think it all depends on the FCC's calendar and what's available. So take away there's only one face-to-face right now.
This is Greg. May 18th was also a conflict.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Greg. I got Paul McKellis and then Brian Daly. Paul?
Am I on here? Okay, this is Paul Michaelis with Avaya. With regard to comments made a few minutes ago about the industry report, I would just like to point out that not all industry representatives on the AAC signed off on the industry statement. Avaya did not sign that report.
Thanks, Paul. Brian?
Thank you, David. I just wanted to go back to the March meeting. I got a little confused on the March 9th date. So you're saying at this point it's not clear if it'll be a face-to-face or not, right? And can we resolve that fairly quickly, like in the next week or so travel plans can be made? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, we do need to clarify that. Maybe there's a need for that based on a lot of the discussion today. I think...
Karen, if we're having a meeting at the end of March, it's probable that we may not have one on March 9th. So it's all connected, and we'll have to get back to you.
Norm?
This is Norm. So it seems like a new issue has been brought to the fore. It's an issue of access to 911 or regular calls. From my recent experience, I have a MiFi, my personal hotspot. I'm actually using a standard app for making VRS calls via that MiFi. But 3 apps are blocked. All 3 of the VRS apps are not working. They don't work with that SIP technology. The cellular industry... my understanding is that the cellular industry is blocking SIP calls, but I'd like to clarify that. Is that what's happening? And is there a particular reason why those calls would be blocked? So this is open to any of the industry folks who could answer that.
If anyone wants to raise their hand or answer that, please. If
Matt, I'm looking at you. I don't know whether you can answer it now. Obviously, you may not be able to, but if you can maybe get back to Norman. If you can't answer it now.
This is there you go. This is Matt Gerst with CTIA. Norman, I think we actually were talking about this during the break, and I'd appreciate if you could actually send me an email with the actual factual situation, because I'm not totally familiar with the situation you're describing. So I don't know I can comment any more than that.
That's right. And Norman, we would appreciate getting a copy, not necessarily of the same email, but we would love to have this written out as well, because it's new to me as well.
Thank you. Joel?
Yeah, I'd like to just comment again, bring something back and make sure it stays on the table. I think the need to develop immediate responses to access to 911 using local and present technology, I'd like to see a meeting soon to see if we can figure out a better way of handling what we do now within the current infrastructure to enhance 911 access. I know I've been participating on a listserv with people who are deaf and blind, and I'm amazed by the communication going on using their own technology they have in their homes. And I'd love to see that technology being able to interface with video relay and other systems that could then get to a 911 operator if needed. There's so much going on that I'm learning, even in the last year of working with this group, that I think there can be a stronger interface with what's available now just by thinking about it and implementing it without cost. I think the cost issue, and we need to work now rather than a year, 2, 3 years from now. There are things happening immediately that we should be responsive to. GA.
Thank you, Joel. Any other hands up here? Yeah, I think one of the big actions, at least right now I'm here, is we really need to clarify sort of what this March is going to look like here in terms of the EAC meeting on the 9th, 8th and 9th. The 911 comes to Washington the end of March, and that's the big takeaway I'm taking out right now is that within the next week we've got to sort that out and a little bit of what we want to focus on either that means. I think right now if you would pencil in at least some sort of a call at some point on the 9th that would just kind of just keep the second Friday as part of the EAAC discussion, and we'll come back with the idea that's either changed or we will have some sort of a short call, even if it's a briefing on what we've decided and discussed. So we can do. Donna?
This is Donna speaking, and I just want to sort of sum up my understanding relating to the 7 working groups. So next week, call will look like a participation list and see who participates in whatever group, what they have time for. And I have an idea for the sign language and speech assistance line. I have several ideas that are sort of content for that part. And I'm wondering if there's a template that we have that we need to follow.
So, Donna, this is David. I'm just making sure I got you. You want to go make sure we have. I think the action was there was something to look at for I'm going to say doodle or something. Okay.
Yeah. Great.
Cheryl's nodding her head. Yes, she understood what that meant more than me. And it would be out there to identify these 7 groups, a little description of them, and then the idea to enlist your support on the group or groups as you see fit for the ones you want to participate in. That answer sort of what you're looking for, Donna?
And this is Donna again. I want to add, is there any templates that we're required to follow in any of these groups while charting anything?
Not yet.
No, not yet. I think depending on the nature of the group, they may create some sort of a template, but we don't have any plans from the coordination committee here to create templates for each of the groups. Unless I'm wrong, but no, we don't have any plans to create a template.
Okay, this is Donna. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think if there are no other Mark, Oh, no, okay, sorry.
Sidebar conversation.
Side discussion, okay. If there's no other comments or questions, we're going to close the meeting here today, and then we will get back very soon on the very next one within a week or two. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.